Hi everyone and welcome along. Today I've got some beautiful flowers including some Narcissus, some Alstroemeria, also known as the Peruvian Lily, and some tulips, so lovely and seasonal. And I'm going to paint a loose watercolour bouquet which might make a perfect Mother's Day card if you're looking for some inspiration. So grab your paints and let's get started. It's such a treat to have the real thing in front of you to study. This is an Alstroemeria, otherwise known as a Peruvian lily. We've got these amazing sort of strong dark red marks on the inner petals and a lovely sort of raspberry ripple blend up the outside. And then I'm also going to do some Narcissus, which are miniature daffodils, essentially. These two flowers we've not done before. We have done tulips before, so I don't need to pop one of those in here for you, but I'll just pop those to one side whilst we get ourselves started. So I'm going to mix up some colours. I'm going to get the Cadmium Yellow woken up. I'm going to get Alizarin Crimson woken up there as well, which will be my two key colours for my Peruvian Lilies. Sap Green. And we'll also need Cadmium Orange, definitely for the Narcissus. Okay, so we are going to do a really nice loose watercolour bouquet today. So I've got some of my larger brushes, and this is going to be a bit of a paint along for you. You obviously will be learning along the way, but essentially I'm just going to sort of delight in painting some watercolour flowers. And I think this would be a rather nice little sort of arrangement, be perfect for Mother's Day. So to paint some Peruvian lilies, I'm going to start with the sort of trumpet of petals. Let's get that flower back in, shall we? I'm just going to pop that off so we can just focus on the flower a little bit. And in fact, I'll pop it in there so we can see from the side. So I'm going to paint some petals using the Cadmium Yellow and a size 6 rounded point brush, and I'm just starting with that thin point of the brush and then using the belly of the brush to draw out into the trumpet. And I'm allowing all these petals to be painted at once, so they are all sort of blending together. And I'm going to drop in some Alizarin Crimson. That was a single pulse of the brush. If I dab it a few more times, you see how it pushes the colour up. I don't need to be sort of actually doing it with my brush too much if you've got a nice wet amount of paint there. Right, I'm going to do another one here. And you can always paint by starting with the broad part of the brush as well. You don't have to always start from the fine point. There isn't really a right or wrong way here, but I feel like the more expressive you are, the better the result. So there we go. We've got some lovely colours going on there, and I think we'll do one more because working in threes when you're doing compositions is always a great idea. So one a bit more central. And the working in threes idea also applies for the number of petals I am doing for this simple, loose Peruvian lily. And let's just leave that to go. See how that blender's just crept up whilst we've been painting and haven't even noticed. How lovely. Now, something, whoops-a-daisy. Wow, that's a hazard of the job, isn't it? We just about survived that. Don't try that at home, folks. If I pop this down, I did actually get a comment from someone the other day saying how they couldn't believe how I chucked my brushes about, and you know what? You've got a fair point there. It's amazing until you start sort of showing your work to other people, you don't notice the sort of bad habits you pick up. Okay, so I don't want to be sort of doing too many stems just yet, but what I will do is I will just pop in a little bit of green because it very much blends from the stem up the petals there. to get that green. So it does feature, and even a tiny bit in the tips of the petals. So now I'm going to place in a tulip or two. I think that's another good reason for these triangular handled brushes, is they don't roll quite so much. Anyway, I am going to do some nice cheerful orange tulips, and we're going to put a colour blend in them. So if you haven't already watched my tulip tutorial, it's a wonderfully simple approach to painting flowers, and a really good one if you're wondering where to start. So I'm just building the cup shape. And there we go. I can just go over my little error we had with the rolling brush. And now the same thing, I'm just going to dab in a bit of colour there, bit of colour there. And this is Alizarin Crimson again. And we're going to let those rest as well. Now, where are we going to pop in this lovely little flower? Let's have a look. Well, I think it might be time to consider a few leaves possibly. Even if I'm not painting them in, I need to have a think about where they're going to go. So I've got sort of thinking about my stems, leaves coming off there. I feel like my little Narcissus probably are going to be happy up here. So I'm going to begin by painting in some rather sort of bright, strong cadmium yellow. As you can see, we've got these lovely little petals that sort of flip out. I'm going to pop another one there. But they have got the orange trumpet in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tiniest bit of orange sort of through the middle of these. But we will let them dry before we pop in a proper trumpet. But my petals are very, very loose. They're very much the sort of shape that the belly of the brush is creating when I squash it down. And at the back there, I'm just putting a little tab in. But if we did a more open flowered one, then my petals would all be a bit more of the same shape, like this one here. I'm not taking too much time over these, and that's very much on purpose, because I want to get the energy of the piece. Sometimes you can tell how the painter was feeling when you look at a piece of art. You can tell if they were going in sort of languid, slow strokes, or if there was lots of energy and movement in the piece. And I will just pop one more up here. Facing in there. A little bit of orange. So I'm really happy with this general sort of cluster of flowers we've got going on. I'm now going to be able to try adding a little bit of the orange trumpet to the top here. Let's see. Oh, that's absolutely perfect. We sort of want it to be a little bit dried to allow there to be a little bit of detail, but I love how it's still bleeding out a tiny bit into the rest of the flower. Now, from sort of angling my head, I can see that the light is still capturing the water on these, so I'm just going to give it about 30 seconds more time to rest, and then we'll come back in and finish this off. So we just gave that a little bit more time. So you can see there's just still the tiniest bit of bleed with these orange centres, but not so much that we sort of lose it, which is just perfect. A bit like a sort of soft boiled egg. So my brush strokes are just capturing the sort of rather little trumpet, if we have a look. It's just a lovely sort of ruffled, rather squat trumpet in the middle of that flower rather than the daffodil. So I'm just sort of painting in the top edge there. And that's rather lovely. This is very much about capturing the essence of the flowers, and that's what loose watercolour painting is all about. Okay, so let's get some leaves involved. So I'm just mixing up some Sap Green in my palette, and I also get my trusty green gold, which comes up as this lovely yellowy green colour, a green gold colour if you will. And I'm going to be quite daring with this. We're going to, as I said, this is a loose painting, so there's going to be a little bit of sort of overlapping and blending, and we just want to celebrate the sort of looseness of watercolour, so don't fret. But I am going to use, to start off, a size 2 brush. Okay, so I am going to begin. Let's have a little look at our stems. Well, that is going to need a bit of yellow to get that. So I can just picturing so I'm just trying to sort of get the sense of the sort of seed pod of the Narcissus, and the fact that a lot of them grow in clusters on one stem. And that you also get that sort of crisp, dried up sepal. So I'm just going to work my way through some of these to make sure we just get a vague sense of where they're coming from. Looking nice, and now we will start to look at our tulip stems. Tulip stems are sort of quite broad and very curly, very curved. So I will imagine that one coming there. So sort of picture it with your brush, travel the journey with your brush. And then sometimes if you want, you can go over the top. And then last but not least, we've got these Peruvian lilies that I've left last because they've got a deeper green stem than the others, just a little bit, and they're a bit more slender. And we've also got the little bits of detail to do on those as well, so don't worry, plenty to think about. So what I'm going to do is start to join those up. And I'm going to go over the top with this one and start to look at some leaves. This is very much about having a bit of fun and seeing sort of where your painting will take you if you're just a little bit brave. Because even I find this a little bit scary to sort of blend things whilst they're still wet and overlap things. But if you don't sort of strike out and have a go at trying things, then you'll never know what it looks like. Okay, this is starting to look really, really lovely in terms of the shape and composition. I'm really, really pleased. I am going to just add in a tiny bit of French Ultramarine Blue to my green, just dabbing in a little bit of the base of some of those leaves because I just find it really helps. And now I am going to have a little look in more detail at this lily centre here because we've got some opportunity to paint in a few more bits and pieces. So one thing we can do to start off with is to paint in, I'm going to switch my water out, there we go, paint in some of these dashes onto the petals. Now I want this to all remain fairly loose, so I don't want there to be too much of a sort of solid sort of thing, anything that jars too much. So what I'm going to do with a clean wet brush is I'm just going to dab a very sparing amount of water over that dry petal. I'm going to take a bit of Alizarin Crimson, and I'm also going to add to that a little bit of the French Ultramarine Blue because the colour is just a little bit deeper than pure alizarin. Okay, and then with quite a sparing amount of my brush, and look at that, just from wetting that petal just a fraction, we get a really fun detail, which is looking really cool. So let's do that again. Clean wet brush, just a little bit of water, not too much. Okay, not too much, I didn't put any on there. And with a small brush, just a little bit. I just go a little bit deeper and darker down the middle. Oh, that's rather nice. And then we can see we've got these filaments and anthers at the top, but we will let those dry and we'll just have a little look at our Narcissus. So we've got those orange centres, which are looking really good. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a tiny bit of that darker colour, make that orange a little bit deeper, and just add a tiny weeny bit of detail, which also manages to tie the colour in so everything is looking like it belongs together. So you don't need much, but that, to say so myself, I'm really pleased with this. And that's the cool thing, is I think the achievement feels so much greater if you've taken some risks. And that's really what I've done today, is I've really gone out of my comfort zone. And yeah, like I say, it is so important to do that. Right, so let's look at these again. So we need some, I think we could just use this colour again for our filaments, which is the long slender bits. But then for the anthers, that's a sort of grey greeny colour, but this is a slightly stylised piece, so we want to make sure it ties in. So I'm just going to use the French Ultramarine Blue and the Sap Green. Okay, let's go. So and again, I'm sort of doing these filaments and anthers sort of like just on top of the flower. I'm not too fussed about whether they're sort of sat inside the petals or over the top. Like I say, it's a loose piece. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend those down into the flower. I think that works really nicely. So there we go, a really loose little Mother's Day bouquet with some beautiful spring flowers, and I really hope you enjoy getting out of your comfort zone and taking some risks. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a big thank you to my Patreons, because without their support, I wouldn't be able to make these videos which everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed that, then hit the like button below and comment to let me know how you're getting on. And of course, if you subscribe, then you will never miss another video. Until next time, bye!